When it comes down to physical retaliation, when it comes time to strike back, the situation has gone physical. It's not about techniques. It's not about how fast one can move. It's not even about moves. It's about understanding how one can use their entire body, from the top of their head to the bottom of their feet, as a potential tool to distract, hurt, disrupt balance, create enough distance between you and the individual in front of you to get out of the situation as safe as possible. So what we're looking at is tool and target development, including strategies and tactics and how to make those tools work. First, it's important to understand targets before we even understand tools. And generally speaking, there are only two targets on the human body, any human being on earth, that if you strike these targets with a sufficient amount of force and proper distraction where the individual is not expecting it, of course, meaning you're not telegraphing your intention to do so, you're going to create debilitation. Debilitation is not about pain. Our objective isn't to hurt the person, and we don't know how much or what kind of pain threshold the individual may have. Are they psychotic? Are they drug-induced? Are they a professional fighter? Have they had their nose broken before? Blunt force trauma isn't always the appropriate answer either. To knock somebody out in a fight, they fall down, bang their head, it's a potential lawsuit. If they have thin skull, they end up in a coma, they die. And so a lot of times what we're looking for are tools that anybody in the general human population can apply with a minimal amount of athletic prowess or astonishing physical strength. So we're looking at debilitating targets such as the eyes, and by striking the eyes, we have to strike both. One isn't enough. I got another one, I can still see you. Or the windpipe, to literally stop the blood flow or airflow from reaching the individual's brain. The windpipe is a lot better than the carotid arteries, as performing a rear naked choke is a fine motor skill that needs to be taught and learned and applied. Not everybody on planet Earth is going to have the ability to use a rear naked choke in a very high stress situation, depending on the level of attackers. Not that it's not a viable option, I've used it many times myself, but I'm much more of a proficient fighter than I am just an individual who learned a 5 or 6 or 10 hour self-defense course off a website. So unless you have the time to take specific amount of courses and train at your local MMA school 3-4 times a week and get yourself, that's a whole different animal. So in terms of tools and targets, we're looking eyes and throat are debilitating, whereas the rest of the human body, from the top of the head to the bottom of the feet, are equally a secondary target. Why? Because whether I throw a knee into her thigh, or she knees me and it lands into my groin or the upper thigh, or it hits me in the hip, I'm going to give her the exact same response if I'm not expecting that strike, which is going to be a defensive, disengaging a flinch of some kind. So what we're looking for is defensive disengagement from our opponent to debilitate them, to cause enough distraction and disruption of balance to allow us to escape. Now, from the position that Pam takes, if she was to take a passive, borderline de-escalation submissive stance like so, and let's say she's facing me, Pam face me for now, between her fingertips and her elbows alone on both hands right now, just with her talking to me and me being, oh hey, you know what, blah, 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 or this kind of a situation, she's got literally approximately 20 tools to cause all kinds of devastation between her fingertips and her elbows. Let's start with her fingers. She's got 10 of them. These fingers can be used to poke and for the throat, the eyes, they can crush, she can pull my hair, she can grab into my ears, she can cause a lot of disruption. She can even grab my entire face and crank my neck with her fingers and hands. So right there you've got 10 tools at your disposal that can cause an incredible amount of damage. With the slightest poke in the eyes, she can get me to flinch and go, what the hell, for a fraction of a second, and stun me enough, giving her time to run. So these got 10 fingers. Then you've got what we refer to as the hammer fist portion of the hand. So that's 10 fingers plus you've got 2 hands, so you got 1 and 2, so that's 12 weapons right now. These 2 hammer fists can be used once again to smash into the bridge of the nose, the side of the jaw, the side of the temple, and the like. Simply stated, if her hands are down and I'm talking and I want to set my opponent up, I turn my hands in a position that sets up the closest part of the weapon to the closest part of the target in a way that allows me to do it, and my opponent doesn't see me do it. I'm so sorry, I've got a couple, boom, and I'm right here where I can smash her. She'll never see that coming. Why? Because I'm setting it up. She's allowing me to get the portion of my weapon so close to her target just by going, look in my car, bam, here's my shot. So it's about the setup as well. So now you've got 12 targets, then you've got her palms. So that's 14 now because she's got 2 palms. If I'm walking in and she launched a palm strike to my jaw, that's going to snap my head way back. Now that becomes a 2-for-1 special if she decides to include the fingers in the eyes. If I'm walking, boom, here. So she's got her fingers both in my eyes and one of her nails actually right now. And her palm lands right into my jaw, causing my neck to snap back, vertebrae to smash. If I'm saying any words with the letters TH, you can imagine what happens to my tongue eating that blow. So these are palms, and you got the hammer fist, you got the fingers, so you got about 14 weapons. Then you've got the knuckles. I'm not a big fan of that one, but you still, and a lot of people can. Pam isn't the type of person who I would suggest go out and start punching people in the face because she'll probably shatter her wrist, especially if she's dealing with a beef about the size of a 6'4", 225-pound guy with a neck this big. She's not going to knock anybody out no matter how hard she punches them in the face. But if she happens to be, you know, a 25-year-old, you happen to be a 25-year-old Golden Glove champion, you've boxed most of your life, and now you're dealing yourself in a social violent confrontations that escalated to the point where you've maybe, I don't know, it's turned into antisocial. I gotta drop this guy. I'm not gonna tell you to turn around and palm him. I would suggest you would because it's still a much better option, but you, an individual as such that I just explained, would have a much greater chance in throwing a punch and knocking a human being out than an individual like Pam, or maybe a 14-year-old schoolgirl, or my son who happens to be 8 years old, and some adult's going, come over here, kid. Now, he can punch an adult all he wants in the face. He's not going to do much damage, but that palm strike, man, an 8-year-old to a 6'4", 250-pounder who's not expecting playing the role of hay and smacks into his jaw will shatter that individual's jaw, cause whiplash, vertebrae, all kinds of stuff. How do I know? Seen it happen. So from over here, you've got 10 fingers and 2 palms and the hammer fist portion, and then the knuckles is about 16 weapons, and you've also got your forearms. A nice forearm smash across the bridge of the nose, into the jaw, into the chest or neck or brachial area. That's a stunning blow. That's a good strike that can cause a jarring move into another individual to create enough space and run, and you've got 2 forearms that can do that, and you've also got 2 elbows, which by virtue of using the rotator cuff, if you've ever put on a seatbelt in your car or had to scratch your back, well, at that point you can throw an elbow effectively that if I'm walking in and she decides to grab my head with the back of her hand and slam in an elbow going this way, she's gonna split me open. She's got bony ass elbows too. So if she grabs me here and it strikes here, that's just that shot to the side of the temple is painful. Now these are kind of slightly fine motor skills, but it's to give you an example of just between the tips of your fingers down to your elbows, you've got about 20 tools literally that can cause a sufficient amount of damage on almost any human being, especially by virtue of using distraction and deception, which establishes the element of surprise on your side. Why? Because the strike you don't see is the one that hurts the most. So when it comes time to physically retaliate, you've got 5 basic principles. In terms of retaliation, they're concepts. They're applicable in any situation. You could be sitting down, standing up, 10 guys, 3 people, it doesn't matter. Why? Because they're concepts and they're interchangeable and they don't solidify you for particular situations like techniques do. It's not about if this person does this, you respond this way, because the reality is we don't know how the other person's going to respond, but we can bank on one thing, that humans have certain reactions and to getting hit, and when we do strike, there are 5 universal principles. 1, I don't want my opponent to see it coming. What does that mean? I don't want to telegraph my intention. So if I'm here and I want to strike her, if I do this, she'll see me coming, but if I do this, she won't. And if I do this and she sees me coming and she flinches, my once powerful blow becomes a glancing blow. For example, the strike to the throat. If I'm not expecting a strike to the throat, like so, and she nails me with 50% of her body weight, I'm going to die. It's instant strangulation. But if I so much as expected, even for 1/100th of a second, much like a shot to the gut, if I can take a shot to the gut because I kind of see it come, no problem. But if I'm in the middle of a conversation with another human being and you come over and you throw a shot to my gut, I'm going to go like anybody else. So if I tension my neck muscles, I'm going to bring the mic down a little bit, nail me in the throat really, really hard. Okay? You're scared. So like, you can hit really hard. You're not gonna, it's not fun. It's not pleasant. But if I'm not expecting that, I'm walking in, I'm talking, and she nails me like that, that blow is going to kill me. But if I am expecting, if I even flinch and I tensen up, the blow is going to have nil effect. It literally goes from you're going to cause the person to die to having nothing of a reaction. And so the telegraphing becomes critical portion, something you don't want to do. Don't telegraph your intention. Next, you want to economize on motion. Do nothing which is of no use. Kind of falls into non-telegraphic movement. If I want to shake Pam's hand, what am I going to do? Shake her hand. But if I'm a martial artist, I'm going to shake her hand. Right? And so I don't need all of this motion to shake her hand when the most direct approach to doing so is going from here to here. And a lot of people go, but what about power? What good is power if you can't reach your target? It's like shooting a cannon from a canoe. It's not going to serve you. You can have all the power in the world, but if you can't reach the target, your power becomes nil and void, zero. It's useless. So don't telegraph your intention, economize on motion, go for the primary targets, eyes and throat, which is the third one. If you can't reach them, you go for the secondary targets. If striking secondary targets stops the threat, all the more power to you. If it doesn't, keep going until you've debilitated the individual, and that's attacking the eyes and the throat. And everything else is fair game from there. So then you're looking at the ability to interpret your opponent's energy and movement through the sense of touch in times where maybe you can't see where they are. If Pam is walking down the street and I abduct her from behind and I grab her, she can't see me right now, but she sure as hell knows where my groin is. So if all she has to do is slam a shot, and by virtue of tactile sensitivity and the ability to interpret my energy, she knows exactly where my groin is without having to see. By virtue of understanding the human body and having one, it's not too difficult to locate people's targets at that point. Why? I've got a face, so do you. In order to reach me with certain moves, your face has to move towards me to do so as well. Why? Because it's attached. So if I'm going to punch Pam and her hands are right here, pay attention to my face now. Where does it go? I'm standing here, I go to throw a sucker punch, boom! My face comes pretty close to her hands by virtue of stepping in, because I'm not going to go, hey man, you got a problem? I'm not going to do that. So my lunging in brings my face close to her hands. My tackling her brings my face close to her hands. My strangling her brings my face close to her hands. By virtue of flinching alone at any time, no matter what I do, I go to stab her, I want to grab her by the throat. No matter what I do to her, if she flinches and extends out, because I'm a human being and my head and face are attached, no matter what I do, my head and face are coming with me. And by virtue of extending her hands, because no matter what comment attack I make that one human being could potentially do to another, in most normal confrontations, the person's going to be here, the head, the face is going to be within this vicinity. I tackle, I'm coming this way or this way. I'm going trained or untrained or football style. It doesn't change where my face is going to end up. So by virtue of understanding these 5 principles, by virtue of understanding tools such as your knees, your feet can be used to rake an inch of skin off somebody's shin, your saliva. I grabbed her, I'm going, listen bitch, you don't, she spits in my face, I'm gonna flinch. One way or another, I'm gonna go from this to this for a fraction of a second, which allows her now to throw a knee if she needs to. Here's that forearm strike. Here she goes for my eyes. And what is she doing? She's tool and target developing. What she's doing is she's reacting spontaneously based on the 5 concepts and the reactions that I am simultaneously giving her based on her attack. Your opponent, the bad guy, the predator, whoever is trying to hurt you, is always going to dictate what your next move is going to be based on how they react. And human beings have 5 specific reactions to getting assaulted. They create distance, they clinch, they take the shot and drop, they take the shot and fire one right back at you, and that can happen one of 2 ways. They're tough as nails, boom, fuck you, boom, back. Or literally as they get hit, they defensively disengage and swing and nail you. And then there's the desired response. Well, actually, one of the rarest ones, the desired response is where they get hit and drop. We mentioned it, but then there's the one where they take the punch, go boom, they look at you and goes, "Is that all you've got?" So these are 5 potential reactions a human being can have to being struck. And some of these are diametrically opposed, such as me taking a punch to the face and creating distance, or me taking a punch to the face and immediately clinching after and then trying to nail her or pulling out a weapon. So because of these varying reactions, we cannot then logically, by virtue of understanding this, memorize any kind of sequences or moves that we're going to do beforehand. When somebody grabs me, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that. You don't know what you're going to do until they react to what you're going to do. And then it's about spontaneously improvising moment to moment as a situation unfolds, but without a proactive plan, concepts, and understanding how human beings in general functions under these conditions, you're not going to be able to do that. That's not doable. And that is basic tool and target development skills in the tiniest of nutshell. And then there's closest weapon to closest target. That principle states that every part of your body, as we stated earlier, could be potentially used as a weapon, from your saliva to your teeth. Your teeth meaning what we're trying to do, once again, is elicit a response from our opponent. So if I've got Pam in some kind of clinch here and I've grabbed her arm in a compromising position, and the clothing, of course, allows her to perpetrate this following tool, she can take her teeth and sink them right into the side of my waist here. But you know what? With adrenaline and with the heat of the situation, the chances of any perpetrator feeling that are slim to none by virtue of adrenaline and potential psychosis. And you can factor in, sorry Pam, I know I'm keeping you there, but all kinds of things from substance abuse to opiates, which is not going to make them feel the bite, but the brain will register it if they can hear the bite after all. So at this point, it becomes more about the growl than the sinking of the teeth itself. As a matter of fact, we never recommend for anyone to eat anybody for a bunch of different reasons that can include hepatitis, right? And so we don't want to exchange fluids. We're not zombies. But if I've got her clenched here and I'm going, you're coming with me, but you know what? And if she just, as she puts her teeth on me, starts to growl, that is going to elicit a reflexive response. My brain's going to go, what the fuck, man? I'm being bit here. So I'm reacting to the person growling. The stimulus response causes me to flinch. It is not a guarantee, but it is something that has been and has proven to be incredibly functional in countless situations, from hundreds and hundreds of testimonials I've gotten over the last 20 to 30 years of doing this. Even up close and personal here, where I grab her or whatever, you start doing that in somebody's ear or like next to the neck, they're gonna go, what the hell, man? That flinch is enough to buy you a window or can opener, if you will, a space of time to allow you to strike again if necessary, create defenseless disengagement, and run. So the closest weapon, closest target principle states that whatever position you find yourself in, you look at your tools, you look at which one is closest to the target. Sometimes you're going to find that you're in a position where I grabbed her by the throat and her wrist like so, and she's going to sit there going, well, you know what? I've got a few here. I can throw a knee into his leg, I can spit in his face, which is going to cause him to flinch, or I can literally palm strike him at this point, or at least get him to move, go for his face where he's going to flinch. So she's got a few choices. At that point, it becomes about choosing the one that's going to be the most appropriate for the situation. If you have a choice between a knee to the thigh and a thumb that's going to go through the person's eye socket, and it's not the type of threat that warrants you blinding the individual for the rest of your lives, but you have access to that closest weapon, the closest target, you shouldn't be using. You should be using the knee to create disruption and run. Why? Because force has to parallel danger. And only through proper adequate training, because you can take this information and understand it, but you're not going to be able to perform it under a stressful situation. Even though you've acquired the knowledge and the information from the video, on a logical level, it might make you go, yeah, I get it. But now to perform it under stress is a whole different animal. Without actually doing this with a proper training partner, and I would go as far as saying an instructor who is competent in this stuff and knows what they're doing to guide you through it, it becomes, well, a slim chance that you're going to be able to access some of the finer motor tools that you have access to, like the disruption using a knee or a forearm, and you're going to find yourself coming down to the bare essentials that 99% of the general population do under a high-stress situation, which is clawing, ripping, tearing, and smashing through Tasmanian devil through your opponent. But if you follow the 5 principles of economy of motion, closest weapon, closest target, tactile sensitivity, non-telegraphic movement, and the primary and secondary target acquisition, you're going to find that you can modify the moral, legal, and ethical implications of these tools at your convenience based on the nature of whatever situation you are facing. The 5 principles of physical retaliation include, in no particular order, locating your closest weapon to your opponent's closest target, economy of motion, non-telegraphic movement, tactile sensitivity, the ability to interpret your opponent's energy through the sense of touch, and the acquisition of the primary debilitating targets and the secondary targets on a human body. If all you're going to do is read this website and watch these videos, and not take any steps further in improving or acquiring more information, knowledge, and skill in basically violence prevention and management and defense tactics, well then we strongly recommend that you understand that the only thing that you will retain at this point is the mindset that we were talking about, right? Which is to go back home to your loved ones and going after the primary targets at any and all costs. And we always boil it down to worst case scenario. So when we talk about self-defense on a very broad and generalistic level, the way I am right now, I'm always assuming you're dealing with the Terminator, who is not, that's the person you have to get off of you. So we're not talking about lesser levels, and if we've gotten to that point, all you need to remember is become Tasmanian Devil, eyes and throat, don't stop until you're hugging somebody you love, or you're dead or unconscious. The only way you're going to lose or die is if you quit or give up, or they killed you, or you're unconscious. But if you're breathing and you're conscious, and you need to fight, you fight like the devil and you don't stop until you're hugging somebody you love.